Welcome to RPG Reanimators, a podcast for GMs where we dissect horror scenarios and offer our experiences and advice to reanimate it at the table. I'm Nathan.
I'm Alex.
I'm Lex.
I'm Holly.
And I'm Colin.
Today, we're joined by a guest, Colin Richards. Colin is an author and artist who has created award-winning scenarios and beautiful art for Call of Cthulhu, 5th edition, and Dungeon Crawl Classics. You can find his artwork and commission information at www.colinrichardsart.com. Thanks for joining us, Colin.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So let's see what's on the slab. The case report for this session is Signal to Noise, a 1980s analog horror scenario written by Colin Richards for Call of Cthulhu. In this scenario, a series of cryptic broadcast intrusions on a local television station lead investigators on a search for the origin of these signals. And do these fragmented broadcasts have anything to do with the number of disappearances in town? As with any dissection, we'll be discussing all the gross innards of the scenario. From this point on, there will be spoilers. If you're interested in playing the scenario, please stop here and share this episode with your GM so they can listen and consider running this for your group. We'll also include links for where you can purchase a copy of this scenario for yourself in the show notes of this episode, which you can find on drivethruRPG.com. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin our dissection. So, Colin, what's kind of the general setup for this scenario? How do the player characters get involved?
Right at the beginning, I set it up so that the player characters all have ties to the president of the local television station, which is experiencing the broadcast intrusions, and he gives them the direct missive, figure out what's going on and solve the mystery. So right off the bat, there's no setup, you're thrown right into the deep end pretty much.
And I really appreciate that because it's like, this is your goal. There's no dilly-dallying around. The players have pre-gens, which are all tied into this mystery as well. So there's like no room for just messing around.
Yeah, I didn't. If you were running this a lot longer, you could have a little short scene where everybody's like waking up and making coffee or whatever. But like, it's like we're here to figure out the creepy broadcast signal. So just tell them to do that, and away you go. So
exactly, we're here for the game.
Right
Right.
on.
I really like that too, at least whenever you're starting off with this missive, and I always start at just mid-meeting where people are already sitting around the table and it starts with Rosenbaum sort of giving them the what's what, and then you can just say go, as I feel like that's a nice, just quick start to the scenario itself.
Yeah, and when I wrote it, the initial concept in my mind was just a quick 4-hour or less convention scenario. And it's like you don't have time to muck about with that kind of all the drama or whatever. It's like just tell them what to do and let them do it. So
It takes a little bit of the stress off of the feeling of I need to role play out with strangers at a convention too, if we're just going right in. I like it. And I like the strong motivations for everyone at the table. You don't have to kind of craft this excuse why your character would be buying in the first place. Nope.
Thank you.
They have strong reasons to be there.
Well, and another thing I wanted to make sure I did was for that role playing with strangers at a convention. I think even in the text, Larry says the president of the station is like, now discuss what your steps are, and it just tells the people to start talking to each other, and like avoid the awkwardness. That's the main goal. So hopefully it worked out. I think it did all right.
Yeah, that was fun. I really liked Larry as a character too, just kind of chopping his cigar, giving these missives and doing a lot of, now see, this might be Lex's edition. I'm getting
See,
a
yeah,
look.
that was actually me. That's in the text itself. I didn't realize, Colin, that you had made Larry just very kind of clean cut, nice, solid, dependable type of guy, someone you would actually want to be mayor. But for some reason, whenever I was reading through it, I was just seeing like this large Danny DeVito-esque character that
awesome.
is just like, they're calling the shots. They can be nice and a little scummy, or they can just be scummy to pressure people to keep going. But thank you, Nathan.
Well, it's good motivation too for the players if they can't expect the person in charge to do a ton for them, which I got the impression with our Larry that he wasn't really going to lift more than a finger to help us.
He's got too much on his plate right now to do this himself. But
Exactly.
no, I love that about Lex when you've run it, and he's like you said, cigar chomping and whatever. Like, it's a great character, and that's one of the reasons I didn't want to include like character NPC portraits or anything in the module. I want, for the most part, everybody to make each character their own, whatever they're comfortable with. I think would be really cool. So.
So, what kind of threats are going to come after our players in this particular scenario?
Oh boy. Weird, inexplicable videos are gonna go after them, and it's even hard to say. Like, I guess we're in spoiler territory, so there's a
100%.
weird.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
We gave the warning. You're all clear.
fair enough. Fair enough. The weird broadcast intrusions are. I mean, it's ill-defined, but they're allowing another reality to bleed into our world, and the mysterious, the gray woman is this agent of menace that is pursuing them through the town. But really, it's not so much creatures that are going to be attacking them in the town. It's more just the overall eerie and creepy vibes or sanity loss. There's depending on how you play it at your table and what elements you like to pull forward and pull back on, but the characters can start to become like their veins and arteries turning into copper wiring inside of them and stuff like that. So that's bad. You don't want that happening. And then eventually the characters will get pulled into the signal realm, this weird liminal space reality. And there's a couple of different creatures in there. So the giant like arm thingamajiggers and weird doctor and just, I don't know. I don't know. Weird stuff. Weird stuff is attacking you. That's what's happening.
Yeah, we ran across enough of that. Although that gray woman, that's a great image, and then to just have it as a menace to keep the players kind of going, that was, I thought, very effective.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I just honestly, when I was making this, I was just like, what weird stuff can I come up with? And then eventually you have to trim that back to the things you like the most, and yeah, it can't all fit. So, but yeah, keeping it weird. That was the goal the whole way through. Like, does it have to make sense? No, it just has to be odd, and roll with that. So.
So, what kind of things inspired some of these threats for you?
Well, the weird arm thingamajiggers that have it's a hand connected to elbow for forever. That was inspired by a Stephen King short story where a dude finds a finger in his toilet, and he tries to cover it up, but this finger's sticking out of the hole in his toilet, and eventually it attacks him, and it's a finger with like a billion different finger joints on it, comes to get him. So that I read that as a kid, that stuck with me forever. So
Clearly.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there you go. There's that.
And now you can share that trauma with millions of people.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I mean, too many joints. That just I don't like it. I don't like it at one bit. The Gray Woman was inspired by the Slender Man. I don't think that is too. I think that's pretty obvious, I guess. But I wanted to have that kind of like a creepypasta hero, like Slender Man is the Jason Voorhees of the creepypasta world, if that analogy makes sense. So
Yeah.
I wanted to do something like that, and I'm like, let's get some gender equality in there too. So the Gray Woman. So there it is.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting to hear that Slenderman was the main sort of inspiration for the Gray Lady, because in both of the games that I've run of this, everyone has said like, that looks like an alien, doesn't it? It looks just like an alien. So like I've used that imagery to sort of go the extra bit with Cal and just saying it's like, no, it's obviously aliens.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
trying to lean into that there. I'll have to think of more Slenderman stuff. That does make sense with your things with the forest kind of coming out to peek and follow the players.
Right. Yeah, it honestly, I love the alien aspect, and it wasn't until I drew that like child's drawing of the gray woman, and I was like, that looks like an alien. And it's like, let's lean into that a little bit. And then I eventually did the face picture and everything else. So I don't know, I like something that's also it can be interpreted multiple ways. I think that's a big part of like creepy pasta, internet horror, analog horror, is that there's not like a one specific this equals this. Truly, it's all up to the players and the keeper and how you're running it. You know.
Excellent. Let's kind of walk through the scenario. Roughly, what's the order of events that you kind of expect the players to go on through this? So we know they already kind of get the mission right away of find out where these broadcasts are coming from. They watch a video handout that we'll talk about later because it's really neat. But they get this. Where do you usually see people going?
First place for every group I've run it for, they go down and talk to the engineers in the basement. There's a weird thing with role playing games that I've found personally, where even though it's completely made up and you can do whatever you want and wherever you want, nobody wants to like. They're like, is this on the way? If it's not on the way, we're not going there. And I'm like, you can take as much time as you want. So everybody is like, well, we're already at the station. Let's just go to the basement. That leads to finding one of the head engineers is missing, and usually people go check on him. Um, on a rare occasion, they've gone to the basement, they found one of the handouts, and they immediately decide to go up to the relay station and check that.
Mhm.
I've even had, I think, my first playtest group, one of the players knew about how television stations work and analog TV stations. He's like, well, there's going to be relay stations around, so let's go check those off the map. This was before they even left Larry's office, and I was like, oh shit,
Love
gotta
it.
gotta fix that up.
Well, I love when that happens.
Yep, yep. Um, so honestly, from there, they kind of explore the town. There's a few little locations and events, but for the most part, people end up going to the station basement. They go to Frank's office. They go to Calvin McCloskey's. They may or may not run into the woman with the missing child. That can happen any time. And usually after that, they're straight up to the relay station, and then from there, it's pretty much a hard stop point that goes into the second half, and they're sucked into the signal realm. Um,
So
so
before we go too far into the signal realm,
sure,
can
sure,
we
sure.
talk a little bit about Calvin? He was a
Let's
pretty
talk.
pivotal player. What's his deal?
Calvin's deal. I love a good like conspiracy nut. I love a good like media hound. Um, I love the idea of in the 80s, like some video store clerk that's way too invested in the movies he's watching and the TV and stuff like that. So I thought it would kind of be a fun character to throw in there and let people do whatever they want with it. If they want to, the keeper wants to bring up that he's a tinfoil hat wearing maniac, or maybe he's a little more tragic and he's just scared and freaked out, or but everybody I know that's run it has had a lot of fun with that specific
Yeah.
character. So if I ever do a sequel, which I have ideas for, he may come back. I may throw him in there, may not. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's great.
I always say if Colin lives, he is going to found Phenomenex
Yeah,
100%.
He's
exactly.
the extended Caliverse.
Oh,
Cal
that's
is
I'm
such a
stealing.
malleable NPC because you can make him like an ally who helps make the electronics that the investigators need to maybe fend off the Gray Woman, or he can just be pure entertainment, but he is a bit of a clue dispenser. Like, hey, this is what's happened.
Exactly. And one of the things too with this, with the whole thing is like, when I first started doing this, I really wanted to make cool handouts to give people, and the thought was, um, why do that unless they're gonna get them? So put away, So Cal can always call them up on the phone and say like, look, I found this or this happened or whatever, and maybe it's a little ham-fisted, but again, like why not, right? I want to get people to check out the handouts and the clues and progress through the story.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
honestly something that's my favorite aspect with Cal is that he can, Alex, to your point with him being sort of a clue dispenser, he's just a repository for all of the kick-ass video handouts that are in the scenario. And it's like whenever I run it for my players, I'm just like, listen, this has some great videos in it and I want to make sure you get it. So like if the wind starts blowing in a direction, it's because I'm trying to show you the cool thing. And I really appreciate that Cal is like, oh, you haven't seen that? I got it right here. And then can just cram it into the VCR.
Well, and you can get the I think I list in the book you can get the videotapes in like multiple different locations. Like I know Lex, you've added it in that the mother of the missing kid, she could have a tape that was recorded,
Mm-hmm.
or you can find one. Somebody can call the station with them, but I really wanted to have it so that there's multiple paths to get each thing, and Cal's a big one because he could, to your point, Alex, he could always call you up and he's like friendly and, oh yeah, check this out, here we go. So
Yeah. One thing that is just so important to remember is that usually your players are only going to play this scenario once. So it would do well to have them see everything that it has to offer.
I'd like that.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about your VHS tape process later because I think that's a really cool aspect to this that immerses people. But let's talk about during the reanimation. But before we get there, let's talk. We said we'd stop. We don't want to talk about the signal realms. I'm taking the lock off. What's going on with the signal realms?
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Like
Whatever you want, man.
Exactly. Like I guess in my head, I kind of liked the idea as an artist. I'm hearing there's a lot of discussion about AI art in the industry and how it's made, blah blah blah. And but I've always been fascinated of the idea of like all this reality that we experience every day, what we can see and hear and smell. It's just stimulus that our brains interpret in a certain way. And what if there was something that could get the stimulus but had no way to interpret it the same way that we do? How would that look? And that's essentially what AI is. So honest to gosh, I wish that I could have had AI art in this module. Ethically, I don't like that, but at the same time, it would have fit so well. That uncanniness of something creating. It's kind of and what a couch or door or window is, but it can kind of make those. So, so that's the signal realm. I don't know what it is. It's out there and it's weird and people go there. So I loved Lex when you ran it for Into the Darkness. Tom was thinking that they were inside an electrical signal, and I thought that was brilliant. And I'm like, yes, lean into that. That's for your specific journey for that group, like go with that. So
yeah, it's basically you have that kind of backroom start off for it, but then like you're saying, it's really open so that you can pick up any leads that your players are giving. So it's like you're in a signal, absolutely, and then just kind of use that to roll with more punches as they keep going.
Right on. And I'm glad you brought up the back rooms because it's basically the back rooms. It's like more or less. So I was like, how can I put the back rooms and not call it the back rooms? I'll just make the back rooms and call it something different. And then I did that. So why not, right?
Well, it's very iconic. Just scratch the serial numbers off, and it speaks for itself.
Good. I hope it's different enough, but I don't know. I hope you all enjoy it. I hope everybody enjoys it. So and if in your playthrough you want to just say like, oh, it's just the back rooms, then go for it.
And here you have express permission from the author.
You got it. Got it.
So in this signal realm, there are a number of sort of things you can run across, right? Like how do you kind of pace that out, right?
That can be a little tough. I think that depends on the group and how long you're running it. In the new version of this, I have advice for running it for a convention. Like it says, use these scenarios. I think I have the We Watch You Watch Us and live studio audience, then go straight to the end.
Ah.
So so you can prioritize it that way. But really, really, it's up to the keeper. One would assume that a keeper would read through it before they run it instead of just like page by page, like.
Oh, you're talking to Nathan. That's a pretty bold assumption, honestly.
What's this, multiple page reading? No, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, it's you just pick and choose whatever you think is cool. There's a couple smaller ones in there, like the stairs usually don't take a lot of time, or you could stretch it out, so kind of fitting things in. But yeah, usually with the Signal Realm, there's a starting point where you're in the hallway, and then the ending point when you go and you find the Gray Woman, and anything in between there, you fit whatever you want in.
Oh, I have so much I want to add, but I'm going to wait until the reanimation phase.
No,
Exactly.
Worries, no worries.
So, what is the beating heart of this scenario, would you say?
Ooh, the beating heart of this scenario, I think, is the strangeness. I think that what I really want in this is a vibe of mystery and dread and ooh, something bad's going on. We don't know what. And then it's at a point where that reaches a zenith, and then it's holy shit, we've got to get out of here. And then you do by experiencing strange, weird stuff. That and the handouts and the videos. So I think that's the beating heart. But I'd love to know what you guys think.
I love what you just said, and I will add on that, yeah, it is this feeling of like something is wrong, and we can't really do anything about it except for dive deeper. And once you dive deeper, bam, you're in the Signal Realms, and then it's like exactly what you said. It's time to act and figure out what's going on and run. But I would add that some of these major themes would be analog horror. We have technology as a medium for horror and scares. And then once we get to that signal rooms, we have a bit of surrealism, a lot of hallways that just don't make sense. I think at one point Lex in his run, I tried to cut my way through the walls and they were just flesh. And that was really freaky.
Awesome.
I like, we hear, or I've heard in RPG spaces often, especially in horror spaces, that it's difficult to bring Call of Cthulhu to the modern age because people consider technology to be this limiting factor to an investigation of, it's just easier if you're running it pre-cell phones, pre-computers, pre-technology. But I think this really highlights very well how technology can be horrific in and of itself. So.
Yeah, I agree fully that's that analog horror element. I mean, the 80s nostalgia is also great in this because there's a lot that you can sort of pull from to tap into. But above all, I love the analog horror elements in terms of previously mundane technology is becoming unnatural and unpredictable in ways that the players and the characters are sort of discovering as they go. It was one of my favorite things to add in my run on Reanimators was whenever they would turn the TV off, there was that lingering after image on the CRTVs where it looked like that face was looking at them the whole time they were watching the screen. And just things like that of, oh, I didn't know that was happening. And I think it added a lot of investment and intrigue for me in this.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've read and run quite a few modern Call of Cthulhu scenarios, and I think yours is the first that not only says, "Oh no, technology is perfectly fine." Yours embraces like technology as horror, not just, well, no one has a signal because you're in the middle of nowhere. What like tries to dodge around horror, you're embracing the technology. You're embracing the technology. You're like, no, we're going full in. Technology is horror now.
Heck yeah. I think a lot too about David Lynch, like Lost Highway, when he gives that weird guy gives Bill Pullman the phone and is like, "I'm at your house right now," and it's like, could you imagine if you picked up your cell phone to be like, "There's a crazy thing out here," and you're talking to like yourself or some weird or like that's so great. Like embrace for any modern horror, embrace the technology. Like just go feet first, make it weird, get in there. Like, yeah, it's awesome.
So, what are some general strengths And then limitations of the scenario have you found when you've run it? Because sounds like everybody here, except for one glaring exception, has run this.
Nathan, a scenario that you haven't run yet is a scenario you will run in the future. So there you go. You know,
Love it.
Strength. I don't know. Strengths and weaknesses. That's tough, man. I'm like feel like I'm in a job interview.
Hard to comment on your own work. Huh?
Put you on the spot.
Where do I see myself in 5 years?
I mean, we have some notes.
Yeah, I have a thought. 100%.
I would say general strengths. I think the vibe is done well. I also wrote the type of thing that I'd like to run, so I hope that other keepers out there like to run this. So I think that's a strength. In terms of weaknesses go, I think that pacing's always been a problem, like in any game for me. And then the old adage, "Kill your darlings." Like I could have omitted the missing kid. I could have omitted this or that. Like so, it's it can be a little tough to run it in under that 4 hours if you're really trying to. But yeah, I don't know. Well, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Like, really, really get in there with the weaknesses because the next scenario has got to be better. So hit me up.
I quite like the inclusion of the moral dilemma of choosing whether to save this missing kid or not when they are encountered in the signal realms. So I think that was a good addition as well. As for strengths, I really enjoyed how you wrote in different endings depending on player actions. Like that's always really strong for the GM to work off of. Those video handouts, they're just top notch. We don't really see that. Especially, I haven't seen it in a lot of scenarios. This was
Ever
the first
before
one.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I quite enjoyed your list of pre-gens, how you had very strong pre-gens that tied into the main plot. And not only did those initial pre-gens tie into the main plot, those two backup pre-gens tied into the main plot as well. We had a scientist from an alternative reality that is trapped in the signal realms when things get lethal as well. So you might lose a character, and then that's a great place for that scientist to come in right around the corner. And the same idea for the missing person's pre-generated characters.
So you're saying I could have gone through another character. I was limited.
100%.
Dang it.
Did somebody not escape a television in time? Is that what happened?
Maybe.
I'm glad you like them. The both of those two were also like you can have multiple copies of it if that makes sense. Like,
Right.
Yeah. So if you had 3 people that get downed in the beginning, you can find 3 missing people in there or something. So
yeah, what I sort of did, and this is slightly jumping into reanimation, but I mostly enjoyed how you had, as Alex mentioned, when the scenario starts to get lethal, that's when you have perfectly fitting pre-gens to bring in with like a really good excuse and reason why. Like that's why they're wandering around, because they got pulled through their TVs too. So that was where I made the station a little bit more populated and kind of dotted some other NPCs around. And just if players were going to latch onto any of them, like Alex kept mentioning the hot weather person. And so that was, if Alex died, that was going to be his backup character that she happened to get pulled through as well. And so like
Never happened.
I had Cal as another backup character. And so, yeah, it's sort of NPCs that they met. Laura could have also gotten yoinked through. And I found that would be a great way to just maintain investment the whole way, that everyone has a compelling reason to.
Laura being the secretary.
No, Laura
Oh,
Stein,
Laura
Jason's
Stein.
mom.
Oh, the mother.
I can tell you didn't read the scenario, Nathan.
I'm providing context to the listeners, damn it. I wanted the receptionist to show up again. I really, really enjoyed that.
I had one for her too.
Yep.
Something that I really liked about the scenario is just thinking on like how my players enjoyed it and what we typically do with Call of Cthulhu, where a lot of times it's either classic 20s or like modern current day, like 2000s plus. And this space of nostalgia that we've seen in the last like decade or so, a trend of 80s nostalgia anyway, right? So this space to let them be nostalgic for a time that you know, not maybe not everyone remembers, but my players remembered, and turning it on its head and it being like this horrific thing, you know. So you have that 80s nostalgia of a time that you remember being a kid or an adult or whatever. But no, it's horrible and it's horrifying. And all of the things that you remember fondly about that time are horrible and horrifying. And I love that. I love that. I love nostalgia, but I love nostalgia more in the lens of horror. It's like, well, maybe not everything that you remember fondly is so great.
Love it. Love it.
I really liked the investigation side of it. Is that beginning really felt like kind of a classic Call of Cthulhu. Okay, somebody's missing, follow a trail lead. I think we actually talked to the mother first. If I recall correctly, we had kind of gone down that path as well. So it really felt like we were gathering all these clues, and then they showed up again near the end, which is really what you want for a lot of these. Is it makes you feel like, oh, I accomplished something by talking to these people. Like, for example, maybe we wouldn't have saved the kid if we showed up later and we just saw this kid running around. We'd probably be like, that's a trap. Nope, not touching that.
I really love the inclusion of Laura and Jason Stein in it because, I mean, well, first off, I still use the imagery, Colin, that you gave whenever I played through this at Chaosium Con. It had a very Dairy vibe to it, where it's like it's just this lone figure in a raincoat stapling a missing poster to a pole with other missing posters.
Yeah.
And I always like the kind of trend you see in a lot of detective stories where you get your first case and then there's another seemingly spurious thing that pops up. But then as you keep investigating, they're both the same thing. And then you can come to further conclusions later, that every step really feels like it mattered, and discovering something that you get more out of later on.
I'm glad that playtest ran so good at Chaosium Con too.
With the Gary lady.
Yeah, yeah. Love it. Love it.
Another thing I really liked was the puzzle that you included in the Signal Realms, where you held up the symbols that were appearing earlier on in the investigation, and getting that right made me and the other players feel smart, and that's always a great feeling.
Awesome. I do love puzzles in role playing games. Lex can attest. He play tested another one. But I do like puzzles, and what you said, Alex, about feeling smart. Like, who doesn't love to feel smart? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's
Playing games should feel good. Who knew?
right. Even if they're scary and bad things happen, you should feel great afterwards. So,
Right.
awesome. Glad you liked it.
I will say a limitation, and if we're going into limitations, is that does need to be hinted at early on by the game master, or else your players might not feel very smart.
That's very true.
I really liked that video aspect because we had those handouts that went through them screen by screen, and we had the pictures as well. So between sessions, I was looking at that and being like, what could this possibly mean? Like, these symbols seem to match something. And then later we had some like pseudo combinations of these symbols that added up to things. And that was really fun to just have the character be really involved in this, and then actually have it mean something was cool, as opposed to just, no man, it's a pretty symbol that I did, it looked kind of alien.
Well, I'm super glad that that worked for you, because they were just weird symbols I made up that looked kind of alien. So
You just used wingdings.
yeah. Old school webdings, baby. These train guy with webdings.
One of the things I was thinking of as a limitation, but it sounds like you're already thinking about this, is how would you bring this into an ongoing campaign or kick off from this? Because it's pretty final seeming near the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, dream scenario would be, I'd love to write like an 80s, not even 80s, but like 80s, 90s analog horror themed campaign setting would be really cool eventually. But that's the thing. I know an ending for a role playing game, it's completely open ended to whatever your players do, and keeper improv. I included, I think, 5 or 6 in there, but one of them does say like, hey, maybe it just wraps up. Like you get out of there and you solve the mystery and everything's okay. And maybe they get recruited by a government agency. Now, whether that's Delta Green or the Aether Institute or something that you make up as a keeper, um, you know, I think that no matter what happens, the characters cannot go back to just like, just watching TV and having TV dinners, and their lives are irrevocably changed.
Yeah.
So I would say lean into that. And there's always the clue too. Maybe they go to investigate the earlier '80s broadcast intrusions in California.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's something else that's happening in the area that jumps out at them, or So I would definitely say to just use your imagination, creativity. That's, I don't know. End of statement. Period. Done. Okay. I don't know what else to add to that. Sorry.
I do like the potential for the Aether Institute to
Yeah.
become something else. I
Mhm.
really do like that. That, if you want to stay with Call of Cthulhu and not branch over into Delta Green for whatever reason, like you kind of have this institute, this agency that you can kind of build up a lore around and utilize that.
You know what that's making me think of? Fringe. Being able to have more of these weird kind of interdimensional incursions, and it's the Aether Institute keep showing up as like more of their experiments kind of start going awry and bleeding over into our dimension.
Love that. Love that. You could also even have it not even be them experimenting, but maybe like it's a genie out of a bottle situation. Now that the signal realm has made contact, like there's no shutting that gate off completely. So maybe the Aether is the ones that are like doing their damnedest to keep it shut, or something like that. Maybe the characters are the only people they know of that have survived the signal realms long enough, and they're consultants.
And I think we'll want to talk about this a little bit more in Reanimation, but keeping that backrooms uh, area, zone, realm, keeping that from seeming like a railroad is an interesting challenge. And it sounds like you've got a pretty good list of that on the section. So I want to talk about that in a bit.
Sure.
But before we get into reanimating, let's kind of recontextualize our general experience with signal to noise.
Sure. So, as hinted at numerous times, I've run this twice. Once for Into the Darkness, and then again for the RPG Reanimators crew as our first AP. And I've played in it once as a playtester whenever Colin ran this at Chaosium Con 2023.
I ran this scenario for my home group as a 4-hour one-shot for Halloween, and I made some small edits. So just shifted the dates to October 31st and added more trick-or-treaters and Halloween decorations.
Any ghosts floating around?
There was a scare I did with the white sheet cloth.
Nice.
I also ran this for my home group as a Halloween one-shot. It was just the perfect time of year for it, and we set it during Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
My only regret is I cannot say that I've ever played this as a player, because I think it would have been a great experience to have played it first, but it was a joy to run.
So if you've listened this far in the episode and you haven't played the scenario, too bad. Sucks to be you, I guess.
Ah.
Oh, wait, I
So-
played it.
I'm literally sitting beside a huge box of VHS tapes, and one of them on top, I grabbed the wrong one, is Halloween 1989.
Nice.
The VHS.
Nice.
So from my family's all the videos they shot. So it's so funny that you guys set it on Halloween like that. So I wanted to keep that Halloween vibe in there, but I just set it a little too early. So I'm super glad you picked up on that and moved it back a pinch. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And now, let's get into reanimation. Overall, how are we going to highlight the beating heart of this scenario?
Are you asking me?
Sure, Colin, take it away.
All right. I mean, keep it weird. At the end of the day, like I feel that you don't need to have every answer or every question answered perfectly. I think the vibe and the creepiness and the weirdness is the most important thing. So I know a lot of people say this when talking about horror games, but like lower the lights and get that mood.
Hmm.
If you can get like a 13-inch CRT TV with attached VCR and burn the handouts to VHS, do that. Like that might be a flex, but if you do, send me pictures. Like I'd love to hear it. So
That's incredible.
yeah.
I'm gonna add that lean into this angle of having technology go awry. Make them fear technology. Make them smash their own radios. Make them get rid of the TVs. Make them paranoid because it's all about how technology is being corrupted by this mythos force.
I love that because it makes me think of when I was 14 and I saw The Ring and I made my mother remove the television from my bedroom because it scared me so
Awesome.
much. So but that's the great kind of fear to tap into. So to go kind of into mine is I don't always use music when I'm running games, but I think this one would really be heightened by kind of a pervasive creepy music used throughout. Physical props would be great too. I love to do that with my local group because, we're all together and I can actually like give them things to hold and look at. For the longest time, I tried really hard to figure out how to convert the videos to actual VHS so that I could like play it on like a little television, but I kind of ran out of time. But if I could manage to do that, that'd be pretty cool too.
I think related to all that, and especially with the mood setting and everything, I absolutely recommend using sound effects if you can. I had a blast adding static sound effects during my runs. If you can find a way to have that happen live over Zoom or however you're running it, great way to telegraph that the Gray Lady is coming or that something weird is happening behind the players without having to say something happened. You just get this that builds so good. And also being
Yeah.
able to have knocking whenever they're in the signal realm / back rooms, as they're walking past a door, you hear a knock on the other side. That happened to me in Escape the Back Rooms, and it scared the piss out of me. So yeah, that's why I added that.
I really would like to add that in his run, which I was a player in, he really trained us like Pavlov to fear the static.
So I want to talk about the VHS tapes a little bit. I think there were 3 of them total by the time it was all done. 4? 4?
Four.
Man, I can't count today. So there's 4 of them. How did you make those? How did you come up with the idea to have these as handouts?
I think it's because I can't stop myself. Like, I wanted to make an analog horror scenario, and I'm like, what about creepy videos? I'm like, God damn it, I'm gonna have to make these effing videos, aren't I? And I did because I can't stop myself. I wanted to have more, honestly, but it kind of got to be a time crunch and whatnot. But really, I took some stock footage I got online of various things, some public domain stuff. I shot some of my own small videos, like out in the I
Cool.
call it the woods, but the strip of land between houses that has trees on it. So nothing too crazy, and then just edited, and I use Lightworks. If you've ever used Lightworks for editing, it's pretty good, and that was it. And just started doing it. I don't even know what else to say. I think the big thing was the video handout that has the weird symbols on it. I knew I wanted the videos to have there to be a reason for them to exist more than just a handout. Like I wanted them to have clues within them. So that's why the one has the symbols that you can use later. That's why I redid it. Lex, when I showed it to you at Chaosium Con, it didn't have the little Aether Institute across the screen to get people thinking about that. The Aether tape at the end was way longer. I cut that down a little bit, so it's still long, but I think it's a little more tolerable. Yeah, and that was it. Like, it was a ton of fun to make them. I really liked it. It did a really good thing for me. I was working on them late at night. It was like 2 a.m. once, and I was editing, and I rewatched like the section of footage I did, and I actually like kind of scared myself. I creeped myself out a little bit, and I was like, well, then I'm on the right track. Like that's
Awesome.
yes. So yeah, they were fun.
I'll never forget that was one thing Alex said is I feel like I just took real life sanity damage from that.
Oh yeah, I did say because I remember specifically in one of the videos after it ends, you just see the face at the end that's looking at you, and I'm like, God damn, I have goosebumps.
Good. I watch a lot of analog horror stuff
Yep.
online. I love it, and it's like I feel like with any sort of prop or handout or document, I love. I'm going to butcher this word, verisimilitude, right? Like I love immersion. So it's like if I'm going to make an analog horror video as a handout, it just has to work on its own as an analog horror video. Like I wanted to make something if I uploaded it to YouTube and created a signal to noise channel or whatever, then Wendigoon would make a video about
Yeah.
analyzing it or something. So
So you're a fan of like the Mandela catalog,
oh
Given Eye
yeah,
Home Entertainment, Local 58. Those are
Local
all
58.
great
Oh my
Yeah.
analog horror.
Thank you for showing that to me, Holly. It's so fun.
love
Love
Local
it.
58.
Love it. Yeah, Local 58. That's Chris Straub, who did like Candle Cove and a bunch of other stuff back in the day. Love that. And then he was on the C team for Acquisitions Incorporated. So love that too. But yeah, that kind of weird, like I love Jason and Freddy and all that. Like big fan, but at the end of the day, it doesn't scare me. Like analog horror actually gives me the heebie-jeebies. So chasing that feeling down, you know.
Awesome. And I want to give props for the accessibility of having the text versions of the videos as well, because I found those very easy to go back to and read through and catch things that I missed. For example, where Alex saw the face, somehow I completely failed my spot hidden and just went, "Mm, it looks like static to me."
Good. I mean, that's why they're there. You know, if it's in front of you at the table, you're always going to be able to access it and remember that you saw this video or that video or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps keep the dates right. That's a weakness to the scenario. The dates, I know a lot of people struggle with those. So which video comes where and blah blah blah. So hopefully that helps.
Well, that's a great part to go into the next section of this is what are some plot points, NPCs, or just general scenario flow that you would want to remove, improve, change in some way?
Yeah, so I have a few comments. So in my run as a player, the bouts of madnesses were a bit tough with the whole rule and mechanic of if you're already temporarily insane, any amount of sanity damage will put them into a bout again. So I would actually go ahead and go into the custom bouts of madnesses and change them to become more goal oriented. So it pushes them on to get a resolution, either a way to escape or a way to join the signal realms in a more like definitive, like, hey, this is what your goal is now, instead of like, oh, you're gonna go crazy and that's like left up to the players. That way you can speed things along and you just streamline everything. I actually ended up skipping some of the monster encounters because some of them might be a little too lethal, and I like to pace things so you do have some bits of danger, and like if you really mess up, you'll die. And that leads me to just looking at the Gray Lady's stats, right? So if we look at the Gray Lady, she has 9 health, all right? And what that means is someone with, let's say, a 9mm, which does a d10 damage, is probably going to spend all their luck to roll an extreme and impale the Gray Lady, and that's
Yeah.
it. But there's ways around that, right? You can give them a special invulnerability that can tie into the main story and only be disrupted by, let's say, the signal jammer. You point it at her, now she can be hurt. Or you can do it simply and just raise the health. I liked what Lex did, and he had multiple Gray Ladies. That gets rid of the issue of, oh, if we just killed the one. But now he's like, oh, well, the problem is much worse than you ever thought, because it's not just one entity, it's an entire just covet of Gray Ladies. Also analyzing the Gray Ladies, I noticed that she has 2 attacks, and they each do D8 plus damage bonus, which is D4. That's pretty lethal considering that your players' characters on average have 12 HP. So I went ahead and adjusted that to a D8, but also to make it keep it interesting, I gave her like normal hit a corrupting effect where it does make their blood veins turn into copper, like Colin originally envisioned. Another thing that I ended up tweaking was consolidation of some locations in order to fit that 4-hour mark. And I ended up consolidating the Forsaken House and the relay towers. I just combined both areas. So they get to the relay towers and then they'd be attacked there. And the way I did that was I added in like a storage closet in the relay tower building just to have that extra door to put them into the signal realms. And I set up a good scare. Player character opened up this fly closet, saw like a draped cloth, and then since the Gray Lady's so tall, she like leaned down from the door frame, and that freaked out some players. And then when they ran out of the signal towers, taking the exit door, they just ended up in the signal realms. So
Love it.
tied that up very neatly.
Love it.
So Colin, how have you seen the Gray Lady run in these? Have you actually had during the playtest people manage to kill it at first? We never had that chance, I don't think.
Well, a couple of things. I would like to point out the newest version of this, version 1.5, the for print version. I did increase her health, so it's at 18 now.
Nice.
To do that, I think her attack is lowered or the same, but I would have to check. But the health thing, Alex, absolutely. I agree completely. But to answer your question, Nathan, yeah, I have had people kill the Gray Lady. So the way I run it, I don't know if it's written there, is that she's impervious to damage unless the frequency modulator is used on her, which would require somebody to like dial it in or whatever.
Yeah.
At least one group that I've run it through figured that out. And they're like, hit her with the zapper and then shoot her. So they were able to kill her, but usually with now the increased hit points, one shot's not going to do it. So she'll at least have a round to mess people up. So
yeah, I really like that you added the extra HP to it, because that was one of the comments that I had. And one of my bigger regrets with the RPG Reanimators run is I really should have just buffed up her HP, because since her attack is so lethal, I tried to telegraph that she was approaching a lot, because I never like feeling like I just gank players, because it's like, oh, she's behind you.
yeah.
But because of that, Alex happened to roll. Did you roll an extreme, or somebody rolled like exactly 9 HP damage with the gun after Alex's character like turned the beam onto her? And there was this moment, I'm like, do I just add like 2 more HP? And I ultimately just kept it going as written. But yeah, I think like 18 or even just like 12 or 14 HP, that like she can take a couple of good shots and still keep coming. Because that can really up, you mentioned that like that Jason or that Freddy kind of stalker factor.
Yeah.
Even with that additional thing. But I think for damage, I'd probably do maybe a D8 plus 2, enough that like if she rolls max damage, that's going to knock the heck out of someone, but it's not very likely to one-shot kill. I was really worried about one-shotting my characters with the D8 and D4.
To devil's advocate and hurting myself in this, I don't mind a high damage because you provided a lot of interesting backup characters to kind of bring in pretty easily, it seemed like. So if she had just nuked the intern, at that point you're already actually pretty far along in the scenario before she really shows up fully to attack. I'm okay with that.
That's
It's
pretty
funny.
big talk coming from the guy who climbed into
myself.
a TV and let himself get blasted with a shotgun.
The point is, yeah, a convention game, yeah, it's okay. You know what? I didn't spend hours making this intern character. I got him, and if the monster kind of to the Freddy or Jason point, if he machetes my head off, that's how it goes, man. Like, that's part of the fun of this, is it can be lethal.
Right. I think Nathan's point is valid, and it really depends on how you want to run things as the GM.
I'd say too that a thought too is I've never had her actually kill anybody. I don't know why I decided to give everybody high dodge skills in the pre-gens, but they always seem to dodge her. But you could have it that like death means nothing in the signal realms, like your body just falls apart and your organs and veins creep into the floor, but you're still alive and screaming there. So, or something like that. Like you're down to 0 HP, but somehow you're still alive. But the moment you exit at the end of the scenario, your corpse might get spit out the other end or something horrible like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can skin that cat, but or the damage lowering is totally fine too. Like I'm all for it. It's your game, it's your table. Like run it how you want.
Exactly.
So my players, when they have found the dead, it's like a scientist or an investigator. I'm sorry, it's been a minute. In the signal realms,
Mhm.
and the person had a gun that was just a little different. Like it was like definitively not a gun of this realm. My players really got it in their head that this was some kind of specialized weapon that would be more effective in the signal realms. And so they took it with them, and they're like, we're going to kill her with this. This has got to be the weapon that the Aether Institute uses to keep these things at bay. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what that's for. Hell yeah, that's what it's for. So I beefed up the Grey Lady stats like quite a bit, but then like leaned into the idea that the gun was actually like very effective. And so
That's awesome. That's super cool.
Are there any other changes that you made, Holly?
I actually like Alex. I eliminated the forest and the Forsaken Home. The sequence as it was written just felt confusing to me as a reader, so I figured it'd also be confusing as a player. So I just took it out. And I had the entrance to the Signal Realms be a door at the relay station building that the engineer knew, like that door isn't that's what is that door? That door, it doesn't exist, or it's a door that normally would open out to the outside, but they went in at night, and so there's this like light pouring from behind the cracks of the door, so it's clearly not going outside. And they're like, awesome. Wait, what is that door, and where does that door go? And it just led them right into the signal realm.
That's super cool. I love that.
I really like that idea, because I know in both of my runs, ITD followed through the forest a little better because they were really interested in the vines that were coming through, which is also just a great detail. Mm-hmm. And someone was telling me after the ITD game that did you base it off of an actual plant called witch's hair or something like that?
No, I don't think so.
The red waxy vines, someone was saying, oh, I know what those are, and like pulled up this link that apparently there is some sort of plant that is not unlike that. I was just like, whoa, that's really
awesome.
Cool.
That's awesome. Not specifically, it might have been in the subconscious or something, but yeah, no, that's awesome. We'll look that up.
Oh. But like with ITD, so I had it that anytime it was skin contact on them, it caused the kind of bat signal light to come out of the farmhouse. So they followed that lead pretty well. Mm-hmm. Like everything in the Reanimators run, it just went to shit from the very beginning. And I'll never forget Joe bobsledding down the forest hill to get to the cabin on the door from the van that Alex blew up after he threw the MacGuffin laser jamming device at her, and then the van blows up.
And don't forget, he was in full plate.
And Nathan just happened to, yes, in foil armor. And then Nathan just, oh my God, he just, what do you call the football? Touchdown pass.
Hail Mary?
Yes, he just Hail Marys his jammer. I watch a lot of sport ball, you can tell. And so they ditch both of the most important devices right at the same time. And yeah, no, it was just a shit show in the best possible way.
You have to jam the tower.
Yeah, that's right. You had to jam the tower because that's how that works. But
You
it was
climb the tower. And
I am a scientist.
and I just felt bad because you burned like 50 something luck to get a regular success on the climb, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you need a hard success, but I felt bad, so I just gave you like, I think, a d6 plus 1 damage or something, and I rolled a 1. So I'm like, you superhero land.
Yeah, no, he's unkillable.
There was a moment we thought that the Forsaken House was the finale, so we were like spending luck like mad.
Oh,
And then we
no!
went into the Signal Realms and we're like, oh.
And that
no.
is one of my favorite things about this scenario is it's a perfect 2-session gig, in my opinion, because in ITD2, I went long on that session because I wanted to get them to the where the figure is fused to the wall in the farmhouse, and then have that kind of showdown with the Gray Lady, and then go in the door to the Signal Realm. That was sort of my goal, to have a big cliffhanger to cut on, or a cliffy, as Nathan likes to call them. And I remember like we were going long, and then they are in the middle of the fight, and I say, and that's where we're going to end the scenario. And Tyler his jaw was on the floor. He was just like, I thought that was the end, and that's why we were going. There's still another session of this, and like it's completely blown away during the whole Signal Realm thing. It was an absolute hoot. But I think next time, I really like the idea of having just an extra door in Relay Station 2 that can lead straight into the Signal Realms. I think that can make this a little tighter. I still like the forest and the farmhouse, in no small part because I based the imagery of the figure that's fused to the wall based on that scene in Annihilation where the body is in the pool. And like, I fucking love that. So I'm keeping it just to have an excuse to keep using that imagery. But I think I'm going to foreshadow multiple gray women. I don't know. But foreshadowing multiples of them kind of drifting through the woods as they're going to the farmhouse and sort of boxing them in. Because I really didn't expect Nathan to try to run out the back door, like to get closer to the danger in order to try and escape. And so I just improvised that like the door was recursive, and like you went out the back and in the front through the same like glint in time. But I think next time I'm going to have more gray women sort of fencing around the house and getting closer, so that running out, you're going to run directly into their arms, and that like you can only really go up into this bottleneck because they're trying to force you into the Signal Realm.
The only downside to that is that then you don't get that final scene where we're like, hey, we shot her, this is awesome, and it's right at the climax, and then you see him coming through the like the stacks of this towards the
That's
VHS
fair.
tree, and it was like, oh no, we definitely, we do not have time to attempt a billion things. Like, we got to just try one thing and hope it works.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
You know, Lex, real quick, what you could do is running through the woods, have her popping out from behind trees, like impossibly, and then it's just one of her, but she's like all over, like anywhere they glance, it's the one
like she's
lady
always in your eyesight. Wherever you're
Yeah.
looking, she's like right there. I like that.
Yeah. So you can have your cake and eat it too that way. So yeah.
I changed a few other things with the scenario. We alluded to it a little bit earlier, but just in looking at the schedules for the broadcast and whenever the intrusions happened, I think it was broadcast 2 is whenever it came on during cartoons, whenever Jason Stein was abducted. I felt like it made a lot more sense that happened during Saturday morning cartoons at like 10 a.m. or so. And I wanted to try and seed the tapes around town so that, because it has that nice sandbox vibe to it, but be able to have them pick up a tape whenever they're there. So I had the broadcast was during Saturday morning cartoons, and Laura made a habit of recording Jason's favorite shows so that whenever he was sick and had to stay home from school, she has a bunch of tapes that you can put in, because that's what I did whenever I was a kid. And so you have your favorite cartoons that are there to watch just during sick days. And she happened to catch the broadcast, but just didn't never rewatch it, missed it. So far that has worked really well. The biggest thing that I'll say on that is if you do it, remember to change the handout dates, because I forgot to do that in Into the Darkness, and I'm really glad no one has caught it yet. But I did fix it for the Reanimator one. I also fleshed out the station staff some more, and like Nathan, I'm glad to hear that you liked Sandy. As I always
Sandy.
have a nosy Texas accent woman with a beehive who lives for gossip. It's just, I wonder why it's so easy for me to bring up. And let's see what else. Of course, like, yeah, making Cal more of a Trekkie. I love it when NPCs are able to give information that is almost correct but wrong in some fatal way. So with Cal, like, being a big Trekkie, having, you know, the truth is out there. Unfortunately, we missed X-Files by like 2 years. I was really annoyed by that. But like, he basically, when X-Files, I have a notice, when X-Files comes out, that is his jam completely. And so that he can just be insistent, like, it's aliens, they're trying to communicate. And it's like, well, it's not totally wrong, but you may not like what they have to say. In terms of the back rooms, like with the manifestations, I think that there's a lot of great ideas that you can use. However, I really found, and also based off of the playtest that we did at Chaosium Con, I have a pretty set progression for kind of players making their way through the back rooms in some way or another. Of course, like starting in the hallways, then the doors kind of build and it splits in weirder directions. Then through some way or another, like having a door that knocks or unlocks after they walk past it. Then having the we watch you watch us, where there's the TV to use that to telegraph the symbols that are going to be coming on later. Then I always make sure to include the body, and did some pretty heavy tweaks on that. I changed the body to be one of the scientists from Aether. And so I just made him Dr. Tanaka and had like an Aether Institute thing on his coat. And he was trying to stuff all the documents that he could with the tape and everything in a briefcase, and then had his gun because he ultimately gave up hope. And in the replacement PC that Nathan ended up assuming after his character just committed suicide by TV.
Disagree. That was murder.
That I had him know Tanaka as like one of his bonds, and like he had a goal to get that research and try and get it out and publish it, because that was going to win him some kind of a knockoff Nobel Prize or something. Oh, and in that thing where I had them pick up the tape, I always have some sort of weird VHS equipment in the same room. That way there's no time pressure to like, because we watched the tape at the big tower of TV bodies at the very end, but I like that they can pick up the tape and watch it right there. So there's not conflicting time constraints in that.
I like that.
The weird science aspect of that was neat too. Is when we started playing this, I didn't really expect that, but it progressed really nicely as we went. Of that, the lead engineer was making a signal jammer or booster, which was really interesting, and it brought in this aspect of like, well, it's believable, right? It's you're stepping up. Then you get the signal jammer guns, and you're like, well, that's a little stranger, but still believable. Like I could see actually building this thing to jam the waves. But then like you're getting into these back rooms, and you've got these cool, like, for the time, that VHS player would have been wild. You could just plug it into the TV as you go, but it didn't feel out of the blue. It felt like it built up naturally, where I wasn't sitting here going like, well, okay, that's a bridge too far, buddy.
Completely intentional, absolutely, 100%. So glad it worked out that way.
And then after the TV and the body, I try to find some way to usher the players either through temptation or forcefully, in the case of the bent arm and elbows, or I love that Tom called it the armaconda, to drag them to the live studio audience. I think that that is just a weird as hell encounter, and, you know, really gets them that puzzle aspect. In the Reanimator run, I actually based the skit that they were reenacting off of a Married with Children episode that would have aired before 1989. So I thought that the Signal beings would have seen it, and that's what they were trying to replicate and what they thought it was funny. because I remember that you then had from the studio audience, it's sort of the door opens in the back into the forest, because you did that during our playtest. And I just thought that was the biggest whiplash of like, what the fuck is going on? And so, yeah, I always have it go from studio audience to the forest to like the observatory with Jason's observation room and then the last room in there. But Nathan, you had mentioned earlier about trying to prevent the back rooms from becoming a railroad. And this is something that I've struggled with, like both in this scenario and also in some parts of Impossible Landscapes, where whenever there are infinite options available to player characters as written, in a way it makes it zero options for them, because there's no way for them, like, I go this way, okay, great. I go that way, okay, great. It's the same. Something that I found really helpful whenever I was running these is that I will always give sort of these wild descriptions with multiple branching pathways they can go on. At minimum, they can go forward or they can go back. And in each, there is some kind of weird stimulus on each of the paths that are available to the players and the player characters. So like on this thing to the left, there was a figure that walked across the hallway. The one to the right, there's a hand laying just in this doorway that pulls away as they approach it. Maybe as they're walking, a door starts knocking from behind them. And so just giving some kind of a weird thing so players can kind of do a choose your own adventure and still feel like they're completely lost and like you're wandering through this madness, but that your choices matter. It's really hard to make player choices matter in a sort of nonsense, infinite void like that.
100%. Absolutely. Honestly, when I was writing it, Alexa was something I struggled with. And ultimately, I made the decision that, like, it's just weird and crazy and keepers will figure it out. But I completely agree with you. It's, if you've ever played Misdues, it's got kind of a vibe to that nature where, you know, and I just, honestly, I didn't know how to fix that. But I like your idea of giving, like, ultimately it's still the keeper will eventually decide when you get to the end, but like during that time, like you said, choose your own adventure. I love that aspect of like weird knocking over here, weird hand thing over here, medical office up ahead, and where do you go? So I think that's super great idea on that.
Right. So it's a way that like the players can sort of choose what terrible thing is going to happen to them. And if they try to say like, nope, horse blinders, I'm just going to go keep going straight. I'm going to get to the end. And it's like, cool, I'll have something pop up to still have some kind of a little spine tingler and then just move on to the next progression area after I feel like we've spent enough time and like it feels like a good part to the story.
I did have a question. So let's say the players don't engage with the mother early. Do you skip the kid later or do you always leave him in?
Yeah, I just skip it. If it's something that doesn't come up, if, you know, I always try to telegraph, like, oh, you see all the missing person posters looking at you and you
Yep.
see this. And that. If they're just like, we're not taking the bait, we don't want to, then there's no kid, you know? And that's happened at least once that I've run through, and it's been totally fine. And the players never said they really missed anything. I just feel bad not giving them the cool handouts of the poster and the little kids drawing. But yeah, whatever you want, add in. So
You know, honestly, I'm going to play devil's advocate with this here. Even if they don't check out the mom or like follow up on the Jason Stein sort of side quest, that's some of my favorite details was dropping the crayons like down the hallways for ITD is like Tom really picked up on that. And he was just like, it's RGB. And like that was totally by chance. I was just trying to think of different colors. And but like having just those crayons and then picking up that picture is just like those are weird details that they can find, and it just makes you not feel great. And you know that there are kids somewhere in all of this madness, but like they don't need to necessarily follow up on any of it.
yeah, it's know your players, know what you're into. If your player's like a dead child in their scenario, like throw in a dead child, man. Like
You heard it
give
here,
them what
folks.
they want.
Colin Richards, just throw in a dead
Straight
child.
Slap one in there. Call it a day.
I do like though the way that it is pretty open of what you give the players. I can see where as a convention scenario that's really helpful. Of I'm gonna spend who knows how long on that first part, and being able to extend or shorten it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's one of those that, like I said, it was originally like a convention scenario. So, but then the tale grew in the telling, so to speak, and it's like you add in what you want, leave what you don't want. If it's time or a problem or something, just shorten it up. Like, especially in the signal realm, there's not a ton of unfortunately a ton of handouts to collect or get.
Mm.
It's just weird scenarios, so you're not really missing a lot. If you don't go up the weird
Yeah.
stairs that get narrow, or there's one in there where the lights go out and you're in a new place, like if you miss that, then no harm, no foul, But also they could take, 2 minutes of playtime of like, oh, that's creepy, and then we're past it. So yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about, we've all played or have run this. What worked at the table? And if you have any interesting what didn't work, how about that too?
My players really enjoyed the different backroom scenarios that were presented to them in the Signal Realms. The flesh TV from the very beginning, like that stuck with them. They were like, what the fuck? So yeah, that stuck with them. The arm. And I think at one point what really like disturbed them, and it was like a one-off like comment that I made. The hand grabbed somebody and started like rapidly pulling, and then one of the players went after it, started hitting it to try to, and it let go. And when it kind of like wobbled away, it like he giggled as it was walking, and they're like, "Yeah, we
I
hate
love
that.
it.
Awesome.
Never again will that happen."
Love it.
They're like, "Absolutely not." The doctor waiting room scenario of it all, and the live studio audience. So all of these like very, very memorable like scenes of horror and just kind of random that don't provide any explanation, but I loved it. Like it was just more weird horror to throw at my players, and they like I said, they still talk about it. They thought that was really great.
Personally, I found the TV, the relay station portion of it, as a turning point and just an investigation place, really effective, of kind of having like a little bit of rain, you're digging up these creepy roots, there's a screaming television, and that temptation to go to the top of the tower and just see how bad it can get. I love it because players don't have to do it and it looks difficult, so a smart person wouldn't. But some people really just want to see what's at the top of that goddamn tower.
I'm so glad in the playthrough you did. When I was watching it on Reanimators, I was so happy when you're like, I'm gonna climb that tower. I'm like, yes.
That's same. I
Finally.
completely, I waived all of the climb skill checks. I'm like, he's taking his time, and I really want to show somebody what's up there.
Yep. That was the first time I've ever seen that. Even in my playthroughs, nobody has climbed the tower, but I wanted it in there. So thank you, Nathan.
Hey, if my character had face planted and broken his neck on the way down, I would have died happy. Like that would have been perfect.
Nathan is just risk adverse. It's fine.
Well, it's funny you say that. I included a little bit in there that if a player falls off that tower, doesn't necessarily kill them. Like they can like vanish in midair and like creep everybody out. So, and then to be found later in the signal realms, maybe alive or dead.
Oh, that's good.
So I would say that one of my just the fan favorite from all my players was just the quality of the handouts, the video handouts especially. Like I'm gonna just hammer it home again. Those are amazing.
Thank you.
They just once those handouts, like the video handout ended, just stunned silence. Of like, oh my god, this makes me feel really uncomfortable, and you did an incredible job.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
As for something that I think didn't quite work at the table, it's something Alex mentioned earlier, is I love the custom bouts of madness. Any scenario that includes custom bouts of madness like immediately gets +2 points for me, because I think that it's a great way to keep that contextual tie-in and not just like, you lose control of your legs. And so like I thought it was great.
Oh.
But whenever those started piling on, and I wasn't keeping track that like when multiple characters had bouts of madness that were causing them to think that this was staged or that they were the main character and things like that, it became difficult to keep maintaining that sort of suspense and to keep going, because as Alex mentioned, like when they hit that indefinite insanity or whatever point, any future sand loss immediately causes a relapse there. And that's with me, is I was just like, okay, your bout has changed. You're now going to do, like, you can do this instead. So I think like in those cases, Alex, I'm really curious to hear what you changed the bouts to, or if that's something we can include as a handout on this episode.
Yeah, I can drop it.
Awesome.
I keep intricate notes.
But yeah, like either being able to change them to have them be more goal oriented to keep progressing that way, or I mean, honestly, just throw the Call of Cthulhu rules out for a bit and just like you have a really bad bout of madness and then you're just going to keep losing sand. Like it's just things are not good, but have them be grounded enough in the moment that you can still get into the wild reactions rather than that's really good makeup. Oh, I know, I'm the main character, can't believe that extra just bled on me. And like, because it was fun from an absurdist standpoint, but like I wanted to keep us into that tense moment, but y'all role played the bouts perfectly. It was just that's something I would tweak next time.
I think that's a great suggestion, and for the next scenario, definitely something I'll keep in mind. Because honestly, when you bring up like, oh, you go into about any additional sand loss, I forgot about that too when I wrote the damn things.
Well, here's the thing about these like official rules. They're just suggestions. So play it how you want.
Yeah.
Yep. But no, I think it's a great goal-oriented bouts of madness is an awesome suggestion, Lex. That's really cool.
Alex, I'll give him credit. Just this once.
I mean, we're both Alex.
So we've talked a fair bit about kind of what it ran like at the table, the good times. What other kind of war stories do we have that would be fun to share?
Alex, are you going to talk about
Yeah,
back shots from God's Glory?
No,
or am I?
I'll leave that to you. You ran the game. But I will talk about one of my favorite moments where we do rescue Jason Stein, and then I think one of the players was like, "Okay, have a handgun."
One of the players, that was you.
Oh,
You're
that
like,
was
can I
me.
give him a gun?
Yeah, just the imagery of that is so funny.
Good job, kid. Here's a gun.
Cover my 6 as he's like piggybacked onto our character.
Incredible.
I honestly wanted him to hit. I gave him a 20, or I gave him base and handguns.
I was waiting for the fumble and expecting one in the back of my head.
Yeah.
I've got one from the first playtest. Actually, was at Gary Con last year,
Mm-hmm.
and there was the first time I'd ever run this for a group, and so there was a lot that they missed. I didn't know what I was doing, but we had these great parts where they would encounter the gray woman, like they'd walk over to somewhere and they'd see her. And they're like, holy shit. And they turn back to their friends, and their friends, I'm like, your friends aren't there. They're gone. And they'd, oh shit. And that was starting to, I really played up the element where it was warping their body chemistry. They'd find the roots were actually turning into like copper wire and stuff. So anyway, dude went in to get an MRI. They took him to the hospital, and they're like, we need to do that. And it blew his like teeth apart, and all his, the roots in his teeth were made of like copper wire, and they shoot out of his cheeks. And that was a highlight for me when I blew up somebody's teeth in their head. So.
That's actually
That's
unlucky.
insane. Incredible.
Oh, you might enjoy the run of Hellhole then.
Yeah. I'm just imagining the nurse looking in the room and just turning the machine off slowly.
Oops.
Yeah, it was so funny because the nurse was like, do you have any metal on you? This is magnet. Then you take off your belt. And he's like, no, I've got no metal. I'm all set. Bam. So that was great. So real fun. Shout out to the Gary Con crew if you're listening. So that was a good time.
I also really enjoyed seeing Nathan's character try to climb into the TV to escape from the signal realms. And like Lex had the most like redneck TV watcher on the other side with like a shotgun leaned up against the wall.
Loaded shot.
And he's like,
You know?
"Oh, what the hell is that?" And bam.
Well, and I was imagining during that, like, the character has no idea that he looks like a static demon from hell pushing his way out of this television. Like, to him, it's just, no, don't shoot. I'm human. I'm human. It made sense. I'm almost out.
To be fair, he yelled, "Go on now, get," and
Yeah.
you did not.
I
Did not
you know what?
get.
I would
Great
love
looking
to have
ass.
get.
When someone
I
says
got-
get, you get.
You either get or you get got, son.
That's
Well.
true.
That was fun.
It was so fun.
Oh, so many stories, honestly. It's hard to narrow them down. One that I'll say, and I'll also pair this with a little bit of advice. Whenever you go to run this, I really recommend just kind of mulling on analog horror-ish spooks and incursions with the gray woman that you can bring up later. Even if the circumstances don't necessarily match, having that kind of pre-planned encounter was really helpful for me to be able to sort of like have that in my pocket when a situation presented itself and then expand on that some more. As I remember, everybody was like really quiet whenever I had the scene when Joe, who was playing the police officer, sees the shadow go behind the window and like runs outside to try and stop it, meets with the gray woman. People are speaking. It's like, wait, hold on. What do I see when he goes past? I'm like, hang on. And so then like this whole thing happens. And then I just cut to Shams's character, Roger. And he just notices that Joe's been in that bedroom for a long time and give that bit of missing time. And that Joe is just standing there, stock still and like bleeding from his nose.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's like, you just see that shadow from the hallway. And it's like, man, that set up a great moment. My second favorite is whenever I completely faked the group out on Reanimators because I was describing the armaconda with the wrist to elbow to this and that, and then whenever they were trying to get Jason out of his room and like to coax him out from under the bed, and I say like, you see a hand attached to a wrist, attached to a forearm with an elbow, and then a shoulder and a little boy's head, and it's like everyone was like, oh.
Let's talk briefly. What kind of ideas would you use to expand this further?
So I really liked the Aether Institute kind of seeds that are spread throughout there. So I think you could really expand on that. Something that we've recently played, a different system called Press Play, which is an analog horror system in which you are telling the story of what happened to a group of people, and you're switching the narrative where you play the people in the found footage and then you cut to the people in the future who are watching the found footage and like what happened, and you kind of like describe what happens to the people in the past and then how the people in the future might end up so you could almost take this and twist it into people from this hometown who may have also gone missing and like turned it into like a little found footage horror from them. And then you have people in the future in like modern day 2020, 2023, 2024 that are watching it and learning about the gray lady. And then here she is, she's coming to get those modern people too. So that was like an interesting, you could almost kind of put it into Press Play a little bit.
It's funny you mentioned that, but I'll circle back to that. But that's called Press Play, that system.
Yeah.
I want to check that out. That sounds super rad. So
It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot, especially you could play into the whole station aspect of it. We already had that kind of interesting cast of characters. It'd be fun to move them then the 30 years later, and just most of them are barely holding on to the station. Larry, the president, is just this old man on a ventilator or something, and still somehow the station is running and you have some adventure with that. I thought the NPCs were just a lot of fun to interact with.
love that.
I love how the scenario gives room to explore the alternative reality and maybe finding a way to get back home.
Yeah. I think that if we wanted, it would have been really cool to keep our playthrough going, but move into you all are exploring the other world and like trying to claw through the ashes of the Aether Institute to find a way to get back. As that could be a really fun follow-up adventure too.
Would it be in your mind, is the world that they are in, is it almost like how should I put this, like an SCP style post-apocalypse where like the Signal Realm has almost completely destroyed that world and there's like gray ladies at every turn?
That's kind of what I was getting at. I didn't have gray ladies everywhere, but I remember whenever I ended it, it's, they come out and it's completely silent. And there are no people anywhere. And there's like an air raid siren that's still going off in the background. And like there's an exploded part of the Aether Institute that I had it very much as like, especially all the local people have been abducted into the Signal Realms. That's where the big Christmas tree TV pile of bodies really came from. And so like maybe if they were going to explore that, there would be more like gray ladies or other things that could be around. I haven't read anything from SCP, but it sounds like that kind of post-apocalyptic part to it.
Now my mind's working because they're in the world that's destroyed and there's those TV antennas of fused bodies like all over the landscape reaching into the cloudy sky like pillars of hell, and they've got to like,
Oh, I like
I
that.
don't know. I don't know. Anyway, that's cool as heck. So I'm into that.
There is a Cthulhu, that sort of scenario setting where it really is after the fall of humanity. That could be a good way to lean into that rule set.
Just play a game of 10 candles after they go into the Aether Institute world.
Analog horror 10 candles. I need it.
I love it.
You
I
have
love
10 little TV screens all around you. Nathan, it was something that you latched onto in our playthrough of it. I thought was interesting is you got into like kind of a decoder ring fixation with one of the handouts from the body, that there were some of the other symbols, Colin, that you drew that it said like earth or tree or forest or human or something. And I think that there could be something else to expand on in there more with these signal beings to like be able to translate a bit, if like seeing the labels on the tapes and be able to match to, instead of doing a luck roll, they could potentially like try and match and find a tape, or if they wanted to go somewhere to go in with that. Holly, you look like you got something to say.
So actually my players did this, and I am the queen of a little bit improv on the fly, kind of messy, where my players think of something and I'm like, no, I really like that, we're doing that right now. So they had got in their head that what was it? It was something forest. Help me out here, Lex.
Like human forest or something.
Human forest. They thought, they interpreted that as city. So they're like, we need to find the VHS tape that says human forest and plug it in, and that'll get us back to the city. And I was like, yes, that is exactly what you need to do. Yes, you're right. That's how it's written. So yeah, they ended up, it was like a spot hidden roll or something to find the VHS tape that said human forest. And then they plugged in and I was like, yeah, it's Jason's bedroom. Here you go. Off you are. So
awesome. That's super cool.
So now for a little bit of unstructured non-dissection, just kind of interview questions.
We're gonna pick apart your brain.
Yeah. Take it away, Lex.
Sure. So, I mean, it is no small secret that we've been huge fans of the video handouts that you incorporated. You talked a bit about your process and making those. But if there were other aspiring scenario creators, definitely not myself, that would want to incorporate multimedia handouts like these, what advice would you want to give to try and make some really good, memorable handouts to include?
Well, first of all, something I learned at the play tests at the conventions, accessibility. So if you're going to have dialogue, like in the Aether Institute tape, make sure the words appear and are readable. You don't want to have people struggling to hear something important and they can't. Additionally, like you said, Nathan, those additional handouts that describe, not everybody can show a video at a table. So having something like that or something to refer back to is really good. In terms of producing them, I mean, I'm no expert. Like I think personally, like just a few minutes. You don't want to have people sitting there for 5 minutes or whatever, something easily digestible. But who knows? Like maybe a 25-minute cutscene works for Metal Gear Solid. Who's to say it doesn't work for Call of Cthulhu? Like you never know. But and then do your research. Look at I watched a ton of analog horror videos, and not just for entertainment. When I decided I wanted to do it, I took some ones I liked the most and tried to analyze, almost like recreate to an extent, like try to figure out why does this make me feel the way I feel, and then how am I going to make others feel that way. So and that's honestly true for any kind of handout or whatever, like the missing persons poster. Like I don't think any of my stuff's perfect, but I looked at a ton of missing persons posters, super depressing. But that's what you got to do for we'll talk about it maybe later in a new scenario I'm writing, an autopsy in Arkham. I've looked at so many internal organs to make pictures, like brutal, but like that's what you got to do. Look at the things you want to emulate and recreate, and try to do it to the best of your ability.
So here's a question on that, because this is something that I'm currently struggling with. Whenever you're looking for things for inspiration, and especially like reading or watching a lot of source material to try to create things, what kind of barometer do you use to be sure that it isn't becoming derivative? There is a short story called Scan Lines by Todd Kiesling. It is so good. It is fucking hard analog horror. And like, I really want to use it as a basis. I'll text it to you later. You don't need to write it down.
Okay, I was like, I'm gonna write this down right next to press play.
But like, I really am inspired to use it as a basis for a scenario. But I feel like a lot of things in it work really well. And I want to be able to change some parts of it without feeling like, oh, this guy clearly just read The Autopsy by Michael Shea and is just building something else from it.
Honestly, it's a question I've struggled with forever. I have a complex. Like I used to draw stuff in elementary school or middle school, and people were like, "Oh, that's just a rip off. That guy looks like Boba Fett," and it's really hit in my soul. Like it's really in there.
Yep.
So it's just something I'm cognizant of. But honestly, you could do worse than to write the scan line scenario and its derivative of that novel, and then start making incremental changes. Okay, we're going to adjust this, we're going to adjust this. And eventually you'll get to a point where maybe the DNA is there, but it's completely different on the surface, you know? And straight up too, I found people they like to recognize things. You play the Isle of Dread for D&D and everybody goes, "Oh yeah, it's like King Kong. That's awesome." Sometimes it can just be derivative as long as you make it fun, you know? Nothing wrong with that necessarily.
You talked about watching some videos for inspiration. Do you have any recommendations that you really enjoyed?
I do. I actually have in the module I have recommendations. I'll just list them off here. But Local 58, we've talked about that. I'd say that may be that's I think what people called it analog horror at the start. So you could start there definitely. Gemini Home Entertainment, amazing. The Kane Pixels YouTube series, The Back Rooms, and his new one, The Oldest View, amazing. There's a series by Linkara, the comic reviewer, called Winter of '83. He made his own analog horror thing as like an April Fool's joke. It's not funny. It's just a weird thing he made, and it's awesome. And then I think what really kind of started my engines turning way back when was Marble Hornets, if anybody remembers that, on YouTube. So it got weird weird in a bad way after a while. But the first season, super strong analog horror vibes. There's a couple others. There's too many to mention. Mandela Catalog, the Monument Mythos, Greylock's been really cool lately. There's a ton. You could search analog horror and spend days looking at that. In terms of like movie vibes, Videodrome is a favorite of mine. Like reaching through VHSs
Makes sense.
and stuff like that is good. David Lynch stuff, Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive for that weird, surreal kookiness. I don't even know. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any others that are really I mean, I know there's more than I'm saying.
It's interesting that you have all these web series as
Mhm.
inspiration too, not just a movie. So really a long form sort of thing. And a lot of those, they don't worry about giving you answers,
Mhm.
which I can kind of see as you're writing this. You brought that in where you didn't feel like it necessarily, you said before, like the vibe is the king.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think a lot of the analog horror, whether the creator had an answer or not, is irrelevant. Like when you put a piece of art out, it's up to the audience to interpret it how they want to. So, yeah, that's a scenario. Like make it how you want it. Something I don't like in a lot of Call of Cthulhu and others is where it's this big convoluted backstory about this guy does this and this, and then the players never learn about it. Well, you're not going to miss anything in Signal Noise because there's no answers to be found. So don't worry about it. The other ones I just have listed here real quick. The movie Ringu from
Oh,
19 yeah,
Oh,
amazing.
incredible.
The WNUF Halloween special, if you guys have ever seen that, love it for the vibe. It's from 2013, so it's a lost newscast where it's Halloween night, and the news team is investigating an allegedly haunted house, and they've made all these fake commercials during the ad breaks and stuff. Incredible. Then of course Twin Peaks, The X-Files, and the show Archive 81, if you've ever listened to
great
that.
show.
Yeah.
It's if you like Archive 81, you're really going to like Press Play, because you can tell there's a lot of Archive 81 in its DNA.
Outstanding. One thing though, I know you guys are interviewing me, but do you have any analog horror or anything you'd like to bring up? Because I'd love to. I'm always looking for Rex or whatever. So
I think you would. I think you genuinely would like Press Play. The caveat is there's no GM and it's like super narrative. So like it can be kind of dependent on the group you play with. But I think
how is that a caveat? That sounds
Well,
amazing.
not everybody's
Sign me
into
up.
that. So
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think from my side, just a lot of like the incantation was a hit that I know Lex enjoyed as well. Of I don't remember the Asylum movie.
Gonjiam. Yeah, I've been
Yes,
waiting
thank
to.
you.
Yeah, Gonjiam Haunted Asylum is great. Much better than has any right to be.
Truly. But yeah, movies like that are definitely kind of in the same vein. I did like that the scenario didn't require everybody to be hauling around VHS recorders the whole time as member of the news team, but I could see how you might use a scenario like that.
Another one is Grave Encounters. If you haven't seen it, I had completely missed it, and
Yeah.
because the cover and the trailer look really cheesy, but they miss the point that it's intentionally cheesy in the beginning. And it's also really, really good. I enjoyed it.
And that, if I'm not mistaken, that's where they go into the asylum,
Yes.
right? And that's got a lot of that surreal, you can't escape
exactly
kind of vibes. Yeah. Yes. Good one. Good call.
Yeah, and if you just like sad vibes, Lake Mungo is a very good one.
I don't consider Lake Mungo a horror movie. It's a drama with a little bit of horror at the end.
Hot
take of the evening.
I don't know.
No, that one scene is so good, but it was just like I watched it. I'm like, okay, this is good. This is sad. It's just a little slow. And like, it finally got exciting, and then it was over.
Oh no.
And like, I don't know. I have thoughts, but that's not the point of this episode.
Right.
I liked it.
And you can't change his opinion.
Another one is As Above, So Below. If you haven't seen it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
really fun.
Yeah.
Oh, The Taking of Deborah Logan. Yeah.
I haven't seen
that was
that
good.
one. Is it
That's a
good?
good one.
Yeah, it's a good horror.
I'd say there's one classic scene in it.
Yep, it's a
and
classic scene.
It's a classic scene, but the thing is, everything before that's creepier, which is interesting. Like I really didn't like the necessarily the ending to it. Final Prayer or Borderlands, whichever one,
Ooh,
it's by two
yeah.
names. That's another really good one, and I think that one actually does a pretty good job with the ending.
Something that
Opinions may vary.
something that I think none of us have mentioned yet, public access, which I know Nathan didn't quite
yes.
like, the RPG.
Yeah, I have it. I've never played it, and I actually got it after I published Signal and Noise, and I'm like, wait, there's another. I'm like, oh no, oh boy, I hope I'm not stepping on any toes. But I really want to play that.
Just be better.
Well, that might be a good time. Are you going to any conventions this year?
Yeah, I'm going to GaryCon coming up,
Nice.
Chaosium Con, and Necronomicon. So
Hey,
we'll be
we'll be
there
there
for
for both of
Necronomicon.
those.
We got 2 out of 3.
Very cool.
So it sounds like there are some opportunities to play public access.
Oh,
Or
I'm
press
hoping-
play.
I'm hoping so.
And press
or
play.
press
Oh, yeah,
play,
and press
or
play.
10 Candles analog
Or
horror.
10. Yeah, we'll have to get together. For
10
sure.
cameras.
Yeah,
cameras.
yeah.
We'll just make our own game.
I'm gonna bring 10 13-inch like portable or 5-inch portable CRT TVs and get to smash them with a hammer.
They're powered
gonna be
with D
great.
batteries.
You're gonna get kicked out of the Ypsilanti Eagles crest for noise smashing.
All right. So moving right along.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you wish you would have included in Signal to Noise that didn't pan through or you didn't have space for?
Yeah, there's a ton. It's Kill Your Darlings, if you've ever heard that writing advice.
Yep.
There's a ton.
I've read on writing.
Yeah, right on. It's I wanted to have a ton of station staff to interact with. Like you could like interview the horror movie host who's the local weatherman, kind of like one of those shticks. But at the end of the day, it just didn't really add it. It was fun, but it didn't add anything. But yeah, wish if I could get a long form of this game going, like 6-7 sessions, I'd include all that kind of crazy stuff. A ton of different encounters in the signal realms that I was just writing up, weird stuff. I wanted to have more video handouts, but at the end of the day, I just didn't have the time. And other than creepiness, they didn't add any additional like clues or anything, so that kind of had to get cut. A lot, honestly. When I first started writing the scenario, Calvin McCloskey was able to there was going to be. Let me back up. Did you ever see that episode of Doctor Who Blink?
Yeah.
That involves, yeah. He was going to have a situation like that where there are broadcasts from the signal realms from many years and across the country, and there's this group on the BBSs that kind of collect those tapes, like, hey, and they're trying to piece together this urban legend of signal realm, the face of the gray woman, so they'd be able to tell you those names and that stuff. And that's kind of in there because it's the gray lady's written on the poster, like why did somebody write that or who? So there's some remnants of that there. But then there was going to be almost like a Pokemon catch 'em all, but for weird analog horror broadcast intrusions, where you could find like a whole bunch, and then if you order them correctly, they'd make like a story or something.
Oh, that's cool.
And that might have been a clue to something later that I never got around to. So that was a big element. The more about the bulletin board systems, which is I don't know why I include that, other than it just fascinates me.
Yeah, it's cool. It's part of the time.
Yeah, it's real weird, but there was going to be like a whole group dedicated to tracking these kind of things down that you could interact with and get more information. That was kind of dummied out eventually.
How about one more?
One more.
Yeah,
there was
if you
going to
had to say.
be there was going to be a couple of encounters in the signal realms where you think you're free, like legit, like one that's going to give you a climax feeling where you fight the gray lady and you jump through a TV and you think you're in the real world until you go home and you like walk into the station and like everybody's a gray lady or something and you realize you're still there kind of like a room 1408 kind of vibe.
Yep.
But that just, again, too long in the tooth, but just that ultra fake out, like get screwed ending. So
Yeah, I mean, well, the good thing about dropping these ideas that never came to fruition is that other people might be able to make
yeah,
something with it.
yeah. I love the idea. Like I wouldn't put out I wouldn't make a signal to noise 2 that involves that or like a new version, but I like the idea of maybe putting out like a free like errata sheet every now and again, like because I feel like the scenario I wrote it to be very again open ended and whatever, but so who's to say that you don't get like just a 1 page free with additional scenarios or weirdness? I don't know if that would be cool or not, but
That could be interesting. That like call it the missing cuts or something like that, and just like all the
yeah,
ideas that like they couldn't really fit in here. Like here's the finished product. Here's some other ideas. If you want it, go.
yeah. I do like making things, so I love. So I could see myself making an additional like prop handout or two, and then a page of here's how you interject this in the scenario. I don't know how that would be received, but for like a free PDF or charge $1 or something for it, like why not? It might be a good experiment at any rate to see if people like that sort of thing.
All right, wonderful. Moving right along. I'm wondering if you have a favorite horror scenario or 3. Just maybe keep it spoiler free for our listeners.
That's tough. I have a lot I really like. You know what? Okay, so it might not be the best scenario. I love running The Haunting, the classic Call of Cthulhu, The Haunting. I've made a ton of my own props and expansions and little bits for it that I think it's a great scenario that I have fun running it. So again, I don't know if it's the best written or anything, but I really enjoy it. My friend Zoe wrote one called The Pirate and the Bride for Regency,
Oh,
which I've made some alterations to make it my own. I do that with everything, but I think that's got a fun setup where everybody's at a wedding in the Caribbean and there's ghosts and pirates. And it's, for me, it's very like a swashbuckling adventure. I like that a lot. Let's see.
All right, one more.
Oh man. Oh,
You have to choose one.
geez.
Pressure's on.
I like
Oh.
getting in a Regency Cthulhu in there. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. See, for me, like I would have a ton of fun playing God's Teeth, depending on who I'm with, right?
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I kind of like just a goofy, like everybody's at a wedding. Let's make some dance rolls, baby. Let's see how it goes. So,
And
uh,
what was the scenario called again?
it was called The Pirate and the Bride.
Pirate and the Bride.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So,
Right,
and
show notes.
yeah, I have to plug. I did the 4 little handouts for that scenario too. But I like the scenario. It's a good setup on that. And then one more. Good God, and good gravy. We circle back. I'm really
Yeah, we can
stumped
circle
at
back.
that. I'm
Yeah.
really stumped at that. That's a good
Since
question.
since I'm looking at the drive through from this, do you want to talk about what kind of led you to make the token packs? You've got a few of those out
Oh
there
yeah,
for
yeah.
Pulp Cthulhu, and then some hand drawn character sheets and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I almost forget that they're there. I put them up a while ago. I'm an artist like by trade, right?
Mhm.
So I was just looking for something to put up to get that passive income. Like I can just put it up and I don't have to mail anything. I don't have to ship or whatever. Um, so and I just thought like, hey, people like character portraits or whatever. So I was making for my home games and stuff. So I just put them up there. Yeah, not too much of a story behind it. It was also a challenge to me. I wanted to get a lot of diversity in them, so I wanted to have.
Mhm.
I didn't. Unfortunately, I've had minor, not complaints, but Call of Cthulhu classic setting. What people want is a lot of white men in suits and hats, which I don't produce in those. There's a lot of like racial and gender diversity. That's what I was trying to aim for.
Mhm.
So
And I like that you've got a deep one in one of them, and High Priest in another. So there's also a little bit of monster in there too to mix it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know I don't know about how useful they are now with AI being a thing, and you could just generate a portrait in 2 seconds. But I still really like my little hand drawn guys. I hope they have character. I hope people like them. So they're a lot of fun, and keeps me practicing, and it's good to do little projects like that when I'm not like actively working on something for like DCC or commissions or something like that. So yeah, it's very fun. And then yeah, I like making things. So the hand drawn character sheets for D&D, just labor of love. The Chaos and the Martian Madness was a 5th edition scenario. I wrote for Gary Con. They had an adventure writing contest that had to involve X, Y, and Z elements, like a mad hermit was in there and stuff. So he's a mad 30-foot tall hermit crab in my scenario. So
I love it.
so I wrote this scenario just on a whim in like under a month, and it took first place at Gary Con. So cool. So I put it out. So that was really the first adventure I wrote, and I don't know. Does that answer your questions? I don't know what else to say.
It answers it.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Awesome.
Now we know that you already talked a little bit about Autopsy and Arkham, but do you have any other future projects you'd like to plug or sneak peek?
Yeah, sure. So Chaosium Con, I call it a baby playthrough where I don't really have a ton written or anything. I'm just kind of off the cuff, but current working title is Delta Kappa Die, I think it is. And it is a silly where the first 30 minutes, brutal, hardcore Call of Cthulhu as the investigators try to seal away an ancient evil. They all get killed, their families die. It's horrible. And they're like, well, at least the evil is sealed in this house for the next 60 years. Smash cut to like 1985 as Chucklefuck House shows up. They smash down the room. They're like, this is dude, we're gonna get so many chicks, bring them into the demon room down here. And then all hell ensues from there. So it's Animal House meets Call of Cthulhu in the worst ways.
Love it.
Love it.
That's good.
That sounds delightful. I'm looking forward to going to Chaosium Con now.
Okay, right on. I'll run it for you guys. We'll see
yeah.
how it goes. I got a lot of ideas for props. Everybody's gonna have like a brewski meter, like a little handout. And as you're getting drunker, like you're fighting,
my
you
God,
get
I love
bonus
it.
dies, but you're like
Oh, that's great.
yeah. So just
That is
complete tongue-in-cheek
so awesome.
nonsense. Autopsy and Arkham, which Lex has helped me play test. I'm a little hung up on that. Like I had great ideas at the start, and I've play tested it like 4 times now, and I'm still just I need to get that beating heart and solidify that. But I'm working my way through it, and that's going to be great. I do have an idea for a signal to noise scenario, which is maybe a little out there. We can talk about that if you want. And then listening to your guys' podcast, you inspired me for a new another scenario. So it's kind of a work in progress. I can't remember who said it exactly, but it was talking about like translating a book. Like you make a Latin roll, or you make a whatever Hungarian roll to read a book in Call of Cthulhu. Well, I thought it would be cool if maybe there's like 4 books, let's say, that they need to be translated by the characters, and each one gives you a piece of the puzzle for like a ritual you have to perform at the end, something classic. Well, I would have like 3 different versions of each translation, and you don't know which version you get. Like if you foobar the roll, you still get the information, but it's wrong. And so whatever permutation happens of that can cause like all sorts of stuff. So, but yeah, okay. I've probably gone on too much. I have more ideas than I'll ever have time.
No, that
to
sounds
make.
like a really fun puzzle. I can just imagine looking at the results and going, Okay, so that one summoned a demon. Let's try the third option for Ritual B and see what we get. Man, leeches again?
Yeah.
What did we mess up?
We just got to do it again. What could go
Yeah.
wrong?
Oh, that's my
Yeah.
brain is still stuck on. No, I'm telling you, it's Klaatu Verata Nixon.
You're like, we have everything. We have the virgin's blood, the goat's head, the sign of the pentagram, and purple gummy bears. Apparently, we need
And a 6-pack of chili dogs. What could go wrong?
1,000 brown M&Ms to fill a brandy glass. That's what's
Exactly.
wrong.
Are we ready to circle back to that third scenario?
Ooh.
Oh, the third horror scenario.
If that is your favorite, or whatever comes to mind, honestly.
Oh man, it's really tough because there's a lot of good stuff out there.
How about the one you most recently played that you enjoyed?
There's a reason when I played. Okay, I play tested Autopsy. I played in my friend Michael's The Magician's Assistant game. That was really good. Play testing that.
Oh, what's the elevator pitch on that? Are you Mickey Mouse?
Oh, what on the Magician's? Oh no, for my friend Michael, he's writing a scenario. Elevator pitches, you're at a magic show, things go wrong, and then it's a ticking clock to try to find out what and why before bad things happen to you. I don't know how to. I
It
don't
turns
know if he
out
wants me
that
talking
was
about
your
it too
card.
much, but it's pretty good. It's a good one. It's a good one. Third scenario. Let me do a hipster deep cut.
Ooh.
I'm gonna say it's from the old Arkham source book. It's the one where you're out in the woods and there is this family, and the dude is like worshiping this. It's like a dark young, but it's like the picture looks like a telephone pole dark. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
I'm just
Oh, that's
babbling
great.
nonsense.
I like that idea
I
though
probably
of
wasn't
just
even alive.
worshiping a telephone pole.
Yeah, it's like, you know how dark young they always say look like
Mhm.
trees. This is like, for some reason, like the straight trunk of a tree with no branches, but the roots are like feet, and it's got this face in it. And he's luring people out there and like killing them. And his like wife is and son are like not complacent, but he's like keeping them quiet and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's real brutal. So
Oh
if I can think of the name of it, or if I can grab my book, I can.
We'll put it in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything you want to add before we go to the outro?
Ooh. I don't know. Keep playing games, everybody. Keep getting creative. Keep having fun with your friends. Like, I love this hobby. I love this community. I'll never be able to give back as much to the community as they've given to me, but I'm going to keep trying as much as I can. And I hope you all have a good time playing games.
We hope our deranged utterings are helpful in bringing this game to life at your table. You can join the autopsy discussion on Discord and subscribe or follow the podcast to hear more gruesome cases. You can find more of Colin's work at drivethruRPG or at www.colinrichardsart.com. Thanks again for joining us, Colin.
Thank you guys for having me. This was a total blast. We gushed about how good something I wrote is for 2 hours. So how could I not like this? This was terrific. Thank you all very much. This really was an honor.
Yeah, we hope to host you again soon.
Anytime, man.
Yeah, well, be sure to check out the show notes for links on where to find the scenario, where to find us, and other links for things like handouts, actual plays of the scenario that we recommend, and other resources like all the lists of the stuff we talked about.
Yeah, Nathan, I'm going to need you to type those up for me, please. I can't.
It's time to go. So until next time, thanks for listening to RPG Reanimators,
where your games can die
or live
on the table.
Maybe some weird government agency contacts you, whether that's people have said Delta, that's Reality's Aether Institute, or who knows? You know.
Can you restate? I think you were mentioning Delta Green or something. You
Yeah.
cut out for a second.
God damn it. Okay, where do you want me to take it from?
I don't
take it from the
remember.
top.
They get recruited by a government agency.
A government agency. Now,
It
whether
happened
that's
again.
Delta
The
Green-
government's
Oh, they're trying to
the
mute
government's
you.
blocking you out.
The
They're
government's
bad
backing
at it
out.
though.
Damn it. They know they don't they know they're listening in right now.
Yes,
so.
they are.